Good afternoon or evening, everybody, and welcome back to another weather forecast here by Agent Weather Forecast. And this is going to be another update on the North Atlantic tropical outlook. As of now, we have some pretty big concern on Invest 98L, which will most likely become Tropical Depression 18L, most likely by the next advisory based on its overall structure and support we have from the latest ASCAP pass. It looks like an absolute beauty right now in the MDR, most likely going to continue to thrive in the warm waters and as well overall uncontaminated waters. I mean, we have really good conditions, so definitely concern for maybe a strong hurricane to develop. Obviously, this will be most likely Sam, and if this does form into Sam anytime soon, it will be 2005, which I believe was Hurricane Stan, which was in 2005. It formed on October 1st. So if this were to form into a tropical depression, it would be 2005 by basically around 9 days or so. So it's definitely a pretty interesting fact that 2021 will be ahead of 2005. Very interesting fact. But before we get in the video and forecast, I would recommend you guys subscribe to the channel, especially if you are in the Eastern Caribbean, as I'm going to have a lot of updates for you guys, as you guys should most likely monitor the system very, very closely as well. Be sure to hit the bell icon so you guys get notified as soon as I post a video, as well smash that like button so we can get the algorithm to recommend this video towards new viewers. But without further ado, let's get into the forecast. So here's the overall look at the National Hurricane Center latest advisory here, and obviously right now we are looking at a 100% chance of cyclone formation within not only the next 5 days, but as well a 100% for the next 48 hours. There you see the overall near 100%. So basically most likely going to form into a tropical depression by the next advisory. Has a clear low lower circulation, at least on satellite, as well as have it seemed to be a closed developing a blockade and overall area of moisture around this low pressure as well. But I'll get a little bit to that just after this. But again, overall showers and thunderstorms remain well organized in association with a tropical wave located 700 miles southwest of Cabo Verde Islands. In addition, recent satellite wind data indicates that the circulation is gradually becoming better defined. If these trends continue, a tropical depression could form as soon as this afternoon or evening. So watching out, this could very well put us basically 90s ahead of 2005. So as well, AOI right here is a 40% for the next 48 hours now. So it is increasing. However, most likely going to form after, obviously after 98L, which will most likely become TD18L by the next advisory. So, but this one most likely will be a possibility that it could become 99L very soon due to the increase in confidence and overall support within global models as well. It has a 60% for the next 5 days, so it is gradually increasing. This low is beginning to develop more concentrated shower activity and could become a subtropical or tropical cyclone as it moves slowly across the marginally warm waters over the north central Atlantic Ocean during the next several days. So as well, even watching out for this AOI up here, and then of course Peter and Rose are now tropical depressions. So here's the overall look now at the tropical wave we are seeing emerging off Africa. Again, there is Invest 98L basically right here. So you see a lot of that moisture kind of moving to a decent westerly move there. So we are seeing obviously this is moving westerly, has all of the MDR left to go through. So definitely likely to become a category 1, if not category 2, a hurricane before it even leaves the MDR. At that point, it could very well become even, we can't rule out the possibility for a major hurricane. So overall, looking at not only Tropical Storm Sam very soon, but even Hurricane Sam. And we have to watch out whether this could become very similar to Larry's strength and becomes a category 3. So we're going to have to really watch out for that. But seeing a good amount of moisture, not much really dry air to really worry about. We see a little bit dry air kind of right here, so a little bit very weak and overall thin SAL layer right here. But other than that, there's really not much dry air whatsoever within the eastern MDR. Seeing kind of, again, one split part of the tropical wave here within tropical depression Rose, and then we have, again, the other part of the tropical wave and tropical trough right here associated within 98L. So there's no threat to dry air, and the storms continue to, again, have a little bit more water concentration as well overall evaporation going on. So we are seeing signs of overall development. So here's the overall look at Invest 98L. Again, consider this is still an Invest officially. However, I honestly think it is a tropical depression at the moment. I honestly think this is a tropical depression. I mean, just look at the structure as well. ASCAT is supporting the winds, of course. and as well the overall, it is again supporting the overall structure as well. But there's a low pressure basically right there. It's obviously seeing a really strong counterclockwise flow, seeing some really strong inflow, as well as seeing a little bit of overall outflow trying to develop there with some overall divergent flow within those cirrus clouds. But this is not looking too shabby whatsoever. Actually, it looks really good, especially in that latest run right there. A good amount of concentration and overall convection associated right in that low. But again, as well, still seeing that kind of divergent flow within those cirrus clouds just to the northwest. But again, looking really good right now. Shouldn't have any limiting factors or any I guess any worries condition wise, because obviously there's very weak shear at this point. This is why it's continuing to thrive, as well as really no threats within dry areas. So this is why it's most likely going to become a very strong storm. But this does not look like a tropical. This does not look like an invest. This has definitely got to be a tropical depression. There's no wonder why it has a 100% chance. So here's the latest look at the full ASCAP paths we have earlier today. Again, this is a little bit old, but it's definitely still pretty reliable, considering obviously we don't have recon over here, so it's definitely still obviously a pretty important source that we have. But there's a low pressure right there. There's the overall low pressure and low circulation, at least what I think is low circulation. I obviously think this is again a tropical depression, seeing as well some really good westerlies within the system. And then seeing again these winds kind of completely just wrapping around there. You see as well those easterlies. So this actually has some really good, strong, fully wrapped around counterclockwise flow around that area of low pressure where you see the weaker winds, obviously, than the weaker overall steering. So you're seeing some decent overall wind speeds here, getting a good amount of winds, getting 30 knots at this point, which obviously is around 35 miles an hour. So obviously it does have tropical depression winds, and it has had tropical depression winds. The strongest part of this is to the north of the actual low pressure itself. So again, looks pretty good, especially on really the eastern quadrant. Looks really good. You clearly see that really just changing direction there, and just really strong inflow within the eastern part of this system. So keeping a very close eye on it, and it definitely, in my opinion, has a close a low circulation, and most likely will become a tropical depression by the next advisory. So here's the latest look now at 91 color. Again, it looks a lot better than yesterday, let's just say the least. I mean, this is definitely not the structure of an invest, basically. I mean, seeing that really clear, trying to really wrap around. I mean, this thing is really developing quite quickly. I mean, this is definitely tropical depression, this is my opinion. And also, I wouldn't doubt if it becomes a tropical storm extremely soon. I mean, this looks like a really good storm. There's no way this is still an invest. I mean, you don't know how shocked I'd be if this is remaining as an invest today, even in the next advisory. This is definitely, though, a really good looking storm. Seeing clear wrapping around at that convection as well. You can clearly see the area of low pressure where there's little convection. I mean, there's no way that invest looks this good. Let's now look at the overall. Let's look at the overall rain here. See where all that overall rain is, so we can kind of just better idea as well the overall convection and the overall initiation going on as well. But let's see what's going on here. If we can get this to actually load for us. It's taking a little bit while to load, so let's see what this happens. But overall, it looks pretty good there. I mean, this is a really good structure. Obviously, we're seeing really light amount of rain in the obviously center of this low pressure. But as well as seeing that really heavy rain as well, specifically in the north portion of the system. Again, that's where you have the strongest winds, so it does seem that the northern part of this low pressure is where we are seeing the overall strongest part and the most intense part of this invest. So here's the latest 18Z track guidance. Again, most likely going to be an out-to-sea storm. Should not be worried for the Caribbean. However, I think they should still monitor the system, as there's still a little bit uncertainty. But again, if this is most likely this good looking right now, there shouldn't be too big of a concern for the Caribbean. And I say that because if it gets more organized and it strengthens quicker, obviously that means the northwest turn and steering will occur sooner, meaning obviously the probability for any landfall will most likely really decrease across not only the Lesser Antilles but as well the Greater Antilles. Although the CMC model is obviously a little bit intimidating, as well the European has been as well pretty intimidating. But I overall think since the GFS, although the GFS tends to really be overreactive, I think they're being pretty reasonable within the system right now. And even to the ensembles here, the AVNI, the CEMI. I mean, even the H Wharf, which loves going overboard, is actually taking it due northwest sooner. So it most likely will not hit the Eastern Caribbean, but they should still monitor the system because obviously you can't really rule out something like that when it's going to be such a close call. But here's the overall look at the GEFS tracks minimal under pressure. So this is continuing to go down. Yesterday it was 985. Now it's 981. So most likely actually has pushed further eastward. So that's a pretty good sign. So there's a little more confidence and more strengthening. Sorry, right now 1,012, then 1,009 again as well. ASCAT supported 1,009 millibars, so really pretty significant drop, and that's going to allow for a huge difference by the 0 or even 18Z runs, because they have it at 1,012 now. It's 1,009. That's a pretty big difference. But you see, the majority are having it kind of going northwestward sooner than later. But here's the overall, meaning that black line. Only a few are getting it hitting the U.S. Virgin Islands and even getting close to Puerto Rico. But like I said, very, very slim chance of that happening. Here's a look at the intensity guidance. And once again, they are getting really intense, actually more intense than yesterday, with the majority now getting it to at least a Category 2. Only around 2 are getting to a Category 3. Likely to become a tropical storm within less than the next 12 hours. So we will most likely see Sam by either the 8 a.m. update or even the 11 a.m. advisory. So most likely going to be seeing Sam by tomorrow morning. And that rate is going to really strengthen quite quickly from forming within 12 hours to being a hurricane within less than 60 hours. It's going to really skyrocket in strength. And that would end up, if it's a hurricane, by the next 48 hours based on this overall organization, its overall rate of development. And then it's going to skyrocket through Category 1. And we have a ton. I mean, let's just go from this line here. I mean, the majority, we have at least 15 models or symbols having set a Category 2. So watching that for maybe a Larry type system, but obviously most likely to be out to sea as well. Like I said, shear is not going to be a big issue whatsoever. Obviously, we see very, very weak steering right now, and odds well, just very, very weak and very little steering patterns within the actual MGR right now. We don't have any really intense ridges nor troughs that are actually really steering, really at this point, Invest 98L. So it's going to be TD18L. Here's the overall. You can kind of see the very tip of it, the cloud cover right there. That's the very, very tip there of Invest 98L. Has all this really great conditions. So obviously within 5 to 10 knots of shear, it's always going to become a pretty monster storm. So it's going to most likely really strengthen like that and stay just to the north of the Caribbean, or it kind of stays a little bit weaker and then just misses and just goes to the north. So like I said, if you're in Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands, Leeward Islands, Windward Islands, I would just really keep a very close eye on it and monitor it very closely. As well, if you know anyone in the Lesser Antilles, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and the Eastern Caribbean in general, I would recommend you guys share this video or just notify them about the system, because although it may not be a big threat, it's still going to be something they want to watch out for. I mean, it's most likely not going to hit, but you know how things are. Very little shear, so most likely going to really strengthen, become at least a Category 1 in the Eastern and even the Western Central MDR. At that point, it's going to really strengthen in the future trend, so it could very well even become a Category 3 in the far future. Also, SSCs are very favorable at this rate. Again, this thing has basically almost the whole MDR left to go, and it has all these very, very warm waters. Obviously, right now, it's basically right here has all this good stuff, especially if the trade winds are steering it at this point, taking it basically due westward. It's going to run into all those very warm waters of anywhere over 28.5 to nearly 30 degrees Celsius. At this rate, it's going to really start strengthening. Going to go to a little bit cooler waters when it starts strengthening a little bit more. It's going to kind of steady it up just a little bit. So going to really watch out. But how the CMC, on the other hand, and as well Euro yesterday, we're kind of having it just missing Puerto Rico, going straight with the Bahamas, but turning the last minute. So, I mean, we're going to still watch out for all this area. I mean, even from the eastern Bahamas to this whole area, I think we have to just kind of monitor it very closely, because all those very low threat of anything happening here. Again, I mean, ridges and troughs can obviously change in location and overall strength. So, if this ridge is obviously stronger, it's most likely at this point going to obviously push it further out to sea. But if it's a little bit weaker and a little bit further eastward and it has less of a pull on it, then we're going to be really talking about for different concerns and obviously watching out for a big threat for the Luster and Tweets. But at this point, there's not much for steering, so it's just going to be on the trade wind until it starts really strengthening. And due to the trade winds, actually, it's going to go into these really warm waters instead of like doing like a Larry and kind of going out like this. It's kind of what Larry did. So if Larry were to happen with that type of ridge setup, then obviously we would have no concern whatsoever. But due to the trade winds being a pretty big factor, taking all of these warm waters, it's going to definitely most likely just miss. But keeping, again, like I said, very close eye on it. Also, again, really some good ocean heat content just towards the east of the Lesser Antilles. So if this storm stays rather weak and kind of does like a CMC and it goes through all these warm waters and warmer ocean heat content, it goes through an area around 100 meters. It's most likely, again, at that point, start turning towards the northwest. So, again, really good conditions, specifically just a few hundred miles east of the Lesser Antilles right here. Got some overall pretty good conditions as well. Like we saw, the water is pretty warm as well. So, most likely, again, with all these conditions kind of stacked up, it's going to be really favorable for this to be really strong early on. So, it should not be too big of a threat for the Caribbean. So here's the overall look now at the 12D GFS model run. So let's see what they have now for MBEST 98L, having it at 1,001 millibars within the next 54 hours. So they're kind of still taking a little bit slower of an approach. And then they start really bursting into really extreme strength now at 977 millibars by September 27th, which is going to be, I believe that's a Monday. Yeah, it's a Monday. And then 968 by Tuesday. Then by Wednesday, the following day, 966 millibars. So I saw a lot of people kind of mentioning like a southwestern trend last night. So I had to really watch out for the Caribbean. But notice how now there's a little bit more of a northeastern trend. So it's kind of just going to go on and off, on and off, and on and off. And that's why I'm saying, like, just mention the possibility to watch out. If you know anyone in the Eastern Caribbean, don't say there's going to be a hurricane hitting them. Because obviously that's something we don't really want to spread that quickly. Because you know how rumors spread it quickly. But due to the overall ridge being all the way over here, and it's a pretty strong ridge. I mean, it's a really strong ridge, actually. Look at these really close icer bars right here when you go further out. So you can be seeing as well some pretty decent threat there for some SAL to pick up after this wave. But this will have like very little effect in steering within this actual low pressure itself because it's so far to the northeast here. So its pull, it's most likely at this point, although it's really strong, but so far away, it's most likely not going to pick it up out to sea like Larry did. If this low pressure were all the way over here, we'll be talking about a different scenario. It'd kind of just be like this rate, like at this point, this high pressure were anywhere right here, it'd probably pull it up like that eventually, like Larry. But since it's all the way over there, it's going to be basically just following the trade wind until it actually starts really strengthening, and that's going to allow for its overall northwestern turn. 967 millibars, 966. And then goes out to sea. But I'm going to keep a very close eye on that. As well, the CMC I find pretty interesting as well. They show a good amount of storms going on. And as well, with some ingredients here within this, within 98L at 1,009 millibars by the next 42 hours. They're also kind of being really slow within development. However, the reason why the CMC is so darn close to the Caribbean is because how slow they have developing. And we all know the CMC is not going to verify. So I would not worry if you're looking at the CMC because this is not going to verify. There's no way it's only going to be 1,002 millibars within the next 4 days. I mean, it's already 1,009 based on ASCAP, and it's most likely ready to trough depression. So there's no way it's only going to strengthen 1,002 to 1,002 millibars within 4 days. So do not freak out if you are in the Eastern Caribbean and looking at the CMC. Although it's been a little bit consistent, they kind of tend to underestimate these storms, but you can still see it still basically just misses because it starts strengthening last minute with those really warm ocean heat content waters, SSTs, and as well still pretty favorable conditions. It goes from 997 to basically within 48 hours to 984, then to 980, and that's why it gets so darn close to the Bahamas and the overall Turks and Caicos area, and then obviously it just avoids as it goes to 976 millibars. So the CMC is really cutting it close, just basically like that. And it's super close. That kind of reminds me of Irma. Obviously, when Irma kind of went like this, basically just to the north of Puerto Rico, then rode Cuba, and then it went like this. That's kind of obviously what Irma did. So it's very similar. That's why I don't really want to people to spread the rumors there on a hurricane for Puerto Rico and all that, because it's very similar to the Irma track somewhat. So I don't want people to say, oh, Irma 2.0 and freak everybody out. And that's why I'm saying just it's super kind of just all over the place within models and overall tracks and all that. There's been Northwest and Southwest trends, so that's why it's kind of still something to keep it just monitor. I mean, I wouldn't really freak out yet, but here's the overall European vorticity. So they as well kind of have a gradual development there. Really weak ridge steering here. This ridge is actually really weak according, or at least according to the European. So either way, it's gonna have a very weak steering on it. So it's gonna basically just have it just go straight west basically until it gets its act together. So as the European gets Sam getting its act together, or at least soon to be Sam getting its act together, it basically just avoids just like the CMC. However, the European kind of has it being a lot more intense, so it kind of makes that turn there instead of it turning like right here. Actually, no, the CMC has it turning like right before the Bahamas. I'm talking right, like that's what the CMC has. It's really cutting close to the Bahamas. But yeah, that's what the European has. Let's now look at the GF, or actually let's look at the CMC, I guess, first. So yeah, I'm gonna just go ahead and look at the CMC if this can load for us. So this is the next 6 hours, the next 12 hours. So there's the overall trough right here. Again, open wave trough. There you are seeing the overall easterly trading, or the easterly movement. Obviously, there's the ridge. There it is, picking up like that. But it kind of it doesn't even make it up all the way to the tropical system. It actually just steers until basically there, basically. So it's not even really steering the storm, if anything. But there you see again the easterlies within this MDR. That's going to keep it going and go westward. But until it gets really strong there, you start to see that actual development there. And there you actually start to see the steering picking up like that. So you kind of see the trough pushing northward. So that's why you're going to be seeing those wind barbs going the other direction. But CMC is showing some really intense. I mean, look at the CMC. This is actually pretty scary there. You have a monster hurricane there in the Caribbean, and then two other MDR system. That's definitely something scary you don't want to see there, especially in September and getting into October, which is known as the second peak. But again, the other models really show that, so we're just going to keep a very close eye on it, because there is a chance that we could get another potential AOI within the next few days. But again, just going to keep a very close eye on it. And then last but not least, now let's get into the steering, the overall steering, the trade winds, and the overall shear. Again, really weak upper level shear. There's basically zero, basically like 10 or even 5 knots all the way up to the upper level. So definitely really favorable environment. Like I said, there's really not going to be much steering. And so this actually develops a really good upper level anticyclone with a lot, and I mean really good outflow channels. We're seeing at least 3 outflow channels within the system, and that's what's going to protect it. There's really not much shear going on. It's going to basically be having really good outflow channels within the system. So it's going to probably look like an absolute beauty. I mean, look at this outflow channel like that. Really good system right there. There's what the outflow channel right here. Outflow channel right there. So it looks really good. Based on 200 millibar, but once it actually starts really strengthening and getting its act together, it's going to just start pushing northward.